Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Langley Lab, brought to you by Langley Consulting, where we tinker and you thrive. And today we are very excited to bring you another tutorial video on how to create a workflow in UKG. So let's get started, shall we? In this presentation, we're going to show you how to create a workflow for an employee, a manager, including self-service options, and then an administrator level. So get ready. In our first part, we're going to demonstrate how you can set up as an administrator the employee self-service for the specific page that includes the name, address change. For the administrator steps, we'll be covering steps 1 through 16. So buckle up your seats. You're going to want to take some screenshots here. If you're building out a workflow for the first time, you're going to want to log into UKG, go to the system configuration and select that little gear icon, that's AKA system configuration, and then expand the workflow administration area of the menu to the left-hand side and select business processes. And then you'll want to search for the business process that you want to create a workflow for. So UKG does this in a variety of different ways. And you'll just want to get familiar with some of the naming conventions that they use. Specifically, anything on the page that includes name, address, or telephone number. It's not all inclusive of every single field on that page, but it is the base format. So in this example, we're going to search for that one, and we're going to select the employee type. As I mentioned, we'll be going over the administrator and manager type of workflows as well. So tune in for that later in the video. So first things first, prerequisites to this page. I know right here we jump straight into the approvers tab and editing that. However, you will want to make sure that the business process is enabled at the settings page. And I'll show that a little bit later in this tutorial. So prerequisites do include that. And note that you can build a workflow here, but not have it available for anybody to edit quite yet. So let's say you're still working on self-service, you're building this out, you can draft it, you can be the one to test it, and by the time you're ready to make it editable for employees as a self-service option so they can update their own name, their own address, you can do that at the employee role level. So we won't be going into view edit access for roles at this time, but make sure to check out the Ultimate community for more information. Very, very helpful. So after you click the Edit Approvers, we're going to go ahead and build out a workflow here by clicking on the main darker blue square at the top, clicking Add, then going through and adding our approvers. You can add multiple different branches depending on whether if you want conditions or not. In this example, we are going to go over a couple of different conditional workflows. So in a lot of companies, I see a name change being something that HR typically approves. So we are going to set up the HR administrator role to be the approver for this first branch. And when you select the approver selection by area, right, as you can see here, you can have a role so that the employee doesn't have to think about who do I select to go this to. It's just going to go to everybody within this role that you select in this area. So once you've selected an approver, added your description, selected how you want the workflow to work, whether it's going to go to the whole role or to an individual within that role, you select that there. And when you click on Change Add above the condition area, this is where we can get into the meat and potatoes of the whole workflow. We can actually tell the system, hey, when somebody submits a change for a specific field, yes, at the field level, we can tell it to go down that specific branch of approvals or to the next approver, etc. So for this example, as a name change, we look at the business type, the type as a business process data, element as the detailed person, and then the data as the first name. So then we select whether it has been modified, and that would be our first condition. We click add and do the same and search for a last name. And then finally, when we've added both conditions, we'll have the option to select an and or different tying of statement. So it can be an and statement or a statement. In this case, we want all name changes, whether it's just a first name change or a last name change, to both go. So it doesn't need to be both of them changing, right? It could just be one or the other. And then once we're done, we're going to click on finish. And for this step, once you've added your first branch, we're going to go ahead and add the address approver, or in our case, a state approver. And we repeat the same steps we did, except this time we're adding different conditions. So we added a third branch here because we want to make sure we capture when an employee submits both a name change and a state change. If somebody just submitted an address change and we want it to go to a different approver than that of a name change one, great. They're going to go to separate ones. However, if they submit a name and state change or address change at the same time, we're going to want to make sure we capture that as a condition. And the best way to test this is to test it yourself, build it yourself, walk through the steps, and make sure that it's actually meeting your conditions. So we're basically, in this last example here, adding all the conditions that we discussed before into this one. And just to go back a little bit, this address approver, we do add a condition here. You don't see it in this screenshot. However, it is the condition of if the state that of their address changes, then route to that approver that we designate. And then so on, we add another branch for name, address change, rename it state change because we want it to go to a payroll administrator instead of HR for them to review, make sure we do business in that state or that they update their resident taxes, whatever the reason may be. And then we add that condition of has been modified. That way we can click add and finish, and we are done there. And then we move it all the way to the left-hand side because of two reasons here. And this isn't on the slide, so you'll want to hear this. The program reads everything from left to right. So if you have a name change on the left-hand side in your workflow and your employee submits a name change and address change, guess what? Going to go down that name change approver only. However, if we move the name and address change conditional workflow all the way to the left, it's always going to read whether it meets those conditions to go down that workflow path before moving on to the next option in the workflow. So we can have these going parallel, or it will read from left to right to determine, is it meeting the criteria of the workflow we already built in this one before trying to meet the conditions of just this one. So that's why we move it all the way to the left. Once you are done building out your workflow and you're ready to test it out, be sure to check the box for approvers enabled. And typically, we wouldn't check the no initiators and approvers list unless you are dealing with something that's SOX compliance related, or you just want it to be part of your best practices, or you don't want somebody that is submitting a change to also approve their own change. Really company preference or SOX compliance if you are under that public company category. Then you'll click save, and that is what your workflow would look like. For the employee self-service steps, this is now what the employee would see for that specific page and workflow we just built. Under the name and address change, you have two options. You can either click edit, and again, the employee will only have access to this if you granted them that access under role administration. under the employee role. You can also, under things I can do on the right-hand side, we don't see it here, but there is also a hyperlink where you can just click on change name address. Once you have it there, you can change the last name. In this example, we changed both the last name and the state in which this employee resides. And then we click save. And as you can see, the following page shows the different levels of approval that we can have. So, because I submitted both the name and address change, 2 levels of approvals are showing up here. One for name changes, my HR administrator, and one for address changes with payroll. As an employee, I don't need to do anything else. In fact, you can even disable this comments box if you wanted to, so that it doesn't confuse the employee or they don't have to think that they enter any comments here. Or maybe they enter whether they got married and moved. So all is personal preference for every company. And then you can click submit as the employee. And for the approver, really simple here. They will review the request down below. Once they scroll down the screen, it'll show the before and after of what values they had in their process. And they'll be able to select not only from an approve action, but also for the action to cancel, deny the request for whatever reasons internally you have. Or you can even choose under things I can do to delegate it. And I'll show an example of that later on in this tutorial. Once you're done, you can just click save and it will be posted, officially approved in the system. Until you do this action, either canceling or approving, the employee's information they submitted will not be visible in the system. So please do note that. So if you like this content, feel free, just a reminder to like and subscribe. We love doing this for you. And the more followers we get, the more content we can put out. So comment down below if you like this content and we'll bring more like it to you. So moving on, part 2, manager. Now this is a manager self-service demo about how to build a workflow, how the manager experience looks when they try to submit a change job position and salary. And finally, how the approver side looks as well. So first we'll cover the administrator steps. Pretty similar. I've covered these steps before, but you log in, go to the same place under business processes and workflow administration. And you will search for the specific business process. Again, you'll get familiar with them as you go. So for this one, we're looking at the manager type for change job, position, and salary. Then under settings, we're going to do a couple of things here. I want to describe this page here. When you click on settings, edit, you are able to 1, enable the business process so it is available for managers. Now, just because I made it enabled and made it available does not mean that they'll automatically have access to do this. As I said before, you will need to control it at the role administration level. So if the manager role that your managers in your organization have does not have the ability to access or edit this specific page, you don't have to worry about it. You can build it in here. You can allow the business process or enable it, and it won't be available to them as long as it's not available in their role. So you'll want to double check that for your company's configuration. Another important note here for the default administrator, this is the person that this request will go to if something in the process fails. So for whatever reason, sometimes workflows don't go as planned. So it will route to this person. So typically it'll be a super admin of some sort or the business process owner of the specific business process. You can also choose to select whether you want to allow initiator comments. So like I said before, this was checked for the employee self-service option example we went over, which is why they had a comments box right before they clicked the submit and they saw the approvers it would route to. Not every business process has these options to the right. UKG has a full list of business process that will allow you to edit during the approval process, meaning that if a manager made a mistake, you could reroute it through or even allow them to save drafts so they can come back to it in case they wanted to revalidate some data, whatever the reason may be. And enabling future dating. So future dating is actually at the company level as well. So if you don't enable it at the company level, you won't even have the option to enable it here. So just a note there. And just because you enable future dating doesn't mean you actually have to do it. You don't have to approve things that go into effect in the future. Just FYI. So I know a lot of companies are hesitant about that due to past trauma with UKG. And then another item here under inbox and email settings, you can set the priority to different levels depending on how you want to process this request. Most requests will be normal, but if it's payroll related, like this one, you may want to change that priority to be higher so that UKG knows to prioritize that change over other changes. So it'll make those changes faster, basically. And then inbox visibility, you can have it checked here so that the manager can see it in their UKG inbox. That way, they're not following up with you and asking for a status. They can see the status of the request themselves. You can choose to display to the employee, but typically for these kinds of sensitive changes, you don't want to display to the employee until the manager has had a chance to probably have that conversation with their employee. So I don't typically see this box checked for this type of process. And then you can choose who to send an email to. So it can be to the approvers, observers. It's basically anybody you want to have oversight, just receive updates via email about any changes you see fit. So some examples of things I've seen happen for that is if we have a super admin account that receives copies of all the workflows because we want to make sure that things are being processed correctly and that nothing is being missed. That's just for a larger organization that, we wanted that in place. We also think that it's pretty good to have an email go out to the initiator, meaning the person that submitted the request, so that they have real insights into how the request is being processed. And then once you're done with the settings, you can click Save. Once we're done there, we're going to go ahead and click on the Edit Approvers area, and we'll be able to click Add for the job change, similar to how we did with the first one. And we will, in this example, add a compensation approver that is allowed to approve anything less than 3%. Now, this is just a description up here. This is going to do nothing to filter requests so that it doesn't go to anybody else. So we are selecting the compensation administrator role. We searched for it here, selected it, and it showed up right here. And since we're in this scenario, a smaller company, or we have a reasonably sized compensation administrator, we want it to go to everybody in that role so that there's no missed requests reviewed. We're going to select role. And then we're going to go ahead and add conditions to that step so that we actually can monitor whether or not a percentage change occurred if it's less than 3%. Now, this I learned through trial and error, as many people in the UKG universe learn, that you do not need to type in 0.03 here in this box. You actually just need to type a whole number, and the system is smart enough to say that is a 3% because of the data type we're selecting. So once you click Add and Finish, the system will now know that any requests that meet this condition will go down that branch we just built. Next up, we'll add another branch for executive approver more than or equal to 3%. And in here, we're going to add our fictitious HR administrator role. And we are going to select an individual from that role because executives, as we know, they don't like to be bothered if it doesn't not relate to them. So we're going to prompt the manager to actually send it to their executive. And we'll get to see an example of what that looks like in the following preview. And then we'll add the same condition we did, except this time we are selecting and is greater than or equal to 3% to capture any requests that go above that threshold we said about. There is so much job information you can select other than this. So I encourage you to definitely take a look at it, explore it. If your company has unique rules, conditions, things that it should follow, you can add a ton of different conditions here. So I've seen really, really complex ones and really simple ones. For the sake of example, this is just a simple one, but if you have complex needs, it could do a lot. So don't be afraid to test it. Once you've built it out, you have your conditions, you're ready to test it, you go ahead and click on Approvals Enabled and click Save to complete the workflow. And now the following steps will show what the manager would do once they are ready to submit a similar request. So they would go to My Team, select My Employees, and then search for the employee and click on the hyperlink of their specific employee. Then they would click on Jobs, Job Summary, and on the right-hand side, they'll have one of two options or both options, if that's what you choose to under Role Administration. They can either edit or they can select the Change Job Salary. And here you can be prompted to enter all the information. Now, this does take some training for your managers to understand effective dating. I see a lot of people use beginning of payroll periods to enter that. So might be something to consider. And then, of course, the reasons as well. The actual fields on this page can be made visible or hidden from the manager, depending on what you want the manager to actually be able to change. So if you don't want the manager to touch the project that they're in or the division, by all means, you can hide those fields and they do not have to have access to them. So I definitely encourage you to check out the platform configuration to be able to do that. But for this example, we're going to click Next and continue with the change. Because we built the condition around a percentage change, we are going to select the percentage in this next page where you can change the salary. And just be aware that if you entered a new rate and it was 2%, equal to 2%, because maybe you go based off of new rates instead of percentages, the system will automatically capture what that percentage is. So whether you use this one or that one, it's going to work. So it's still going to capture it. Then you can click Save to jump right to the end of the workflow. And the manager will see that they have an approver there. Because this example, we had less than 3%, we have the compensation administrator approving. The manager can then use the notes box to enter any justification reasons as to why they're submitting this request. And then they can click Submit. And on the flip side, if you make a percentage change that again is bigger than 3%, bigger than or equal to, based on our condition, then you can go ahead and click Save and you'll have the different approver listed there. For this one, you will have an actual individual instead of the role. So you'll be able to select from a drop down of people instead of a role because that's what we selected previously. So, all right, once you click Submit, this is what the approver will be able to see. They will have the same page, same interface that we've seen before. Now, I do want to point out that this inbox is an older version of the inbox. They are coming out with a new inbox. It's been out for a while, but there's been some glitches in the past. So a lot of people are still sticking with the older form of this inbox. And our demo environment does not support yet the new inbox environment. So we are going with it. So you can, again, have the option to choose to approve the request, review the details of the request. Maybe you want to modify it. You do have the option to edit the request as well as an approver. So if the manager made a mistake or something, you can go ahead and click on Edit. So part 3, Administrator, we're going to demonstrate an add change of job history. Now, this is not something I've commonly seen, but if your organization wants to have oversight over job history changes, for whatever reason, accountability, integrity, whatnot. There's many reasons to add it. So you follow the same steps, go to the same area in the menu that we've discussed already twice, and you would search for the specific business process we're talking about today. And we would select the administrator type for that business process. Then we would edit the settings, make sure that it aligns with how we want to handle requests in our organization, and click Save. Then we can edit the actual approvers. Go ahead and add, as we have in the past, at the blue box, clicking the add and adding a branch, adding the description, searching for an approver and selecting them, and then determining whether you want an individual or a role. And then you can click Add Change to add a condition. So really, in this scenario, they only want to see any time an hourly pay rate has been modified in a job history. So that is what we're going to look for. As I said, there's a lot of information here, so feel free to play with it, search for it. So let's click Add and then Finish. And once you're done, don't forget to enable that approvers box on the left-hand side and then click Save. Then as the administrator, we're going to go to Administration, Employee Admin, expanding that part of the menu, going to My Employees and selecting any one of these lovely employees in our sandbox. And once you get there, you can select Jobs in the menu and then Job History. This view will change depending on what you grant your administrator access to. So if they don't have access to see this page, they won't be able to edit it, even if they do have access, because you can grant view access over edit access. Pretty granular. Then once you find the job history page and the line you want to edit, you go to that hyperlink date and click Edit. Change the hourly rate to make sure that it works. Obviously, I wouldn't try this in your production environment. Always try it in test or on a dummy employee, depending on how your environment is set up. And go ahead and change the rates. Click Save. And now we can see that an individual is listed here at an approver level 1. Now, if we wanted to, there's also a drop down that we could see of other approvers within that list. So if we knew that it had to go to somebody else, we could select somebody else on the list. And then we click Submit. And then the approver will see it in their inbox, either by looking at the icon at the top right. And this is the same for all requests for any approver. So I know we didn't show this screenshot for every single one, but anybody who has an action for themselves will have this bell icon with the number 1 and be able to access it this way by clicking on the date timestamp hyperlink. And here you'll be able to take action on the request, as we have talked about before, denying, canceling, whatever it may be. And we can even scroll down to see the before values and the submitted values. So anything highlighted in this blue will be visible to the approver, and also anything that remained unchanged will be visible. So if you need to look at other things to make sure that they're not being underpaid for their specific location, that is something that maybe this person might want to know. Then you can click Save and be done with it and add comments to make sure you have any notes you want to refer back to. Optionally, you can also delegate the request. So if it was sent to you by accident, like you don't review requests for that specific location, that branch, that region, whatever it is, it was sent to you by accident, or you're going to go out on vacation, you don't have time to review it, you can delegate it to somebody else within that role. So by clicking on Delegate, you'll have this option, this magnifying glass that you can click on to search for any other person we want to delegate this request to. Once you selected them, you can click Save. And after you delegate the request, it won't be visible to you anymore. Additionally, let's say you have vacation plan, the out of office. And again, if you don't have this enabled for yourself, it might be a role administration issue with your role. So that might be one of the reasons. Highly recommend using the out of office feature. Once you're in that page, you can click add on the top right hand side and you can enter the dates you'll be out of office, make it active, especially if it's in the future, and even select who will be taking over the review of your request during that time. And then you can click save. We hope you found this really helpful. It's a lot. Thank you for the person that put this presentation together. We are very excited to continue bringing this content. And if you're interested in working together because, you pass the vibe checks and you like me or we might vibe, then feel free to hit us up. Email info@langleyconsultingllc.com and let's get an intro going. I don't know. We'll see where it leads. So don't forget to also like and subscribe if you like and want to see more content like this. We are here. We're trying to be good community members of the UKG community. So if you have any questions, comment down below and we'll be sure to get back to you as soon as we can. All right. Thank you guys. Bye.